Actually, because
You have?
yeah, because I tweeted out my schedule for the day, which
All I
was
saw in your tweets was that how everyone had given you a blowjob to go to BlizzCon.
no, no. Give me
Those
blowjob. We're
BlizzCon
live, by the
blowjob.
way, so you might want to
Uh,
be nice to
right.
people. We only
Turns
Well,
out
are.
a
they're
lot
not
of
people; they're subs anyway. So I guess it
t-
doesn't.
Yeah.
turns out that a lot of people from my work listen to this podcast, which was unsettling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or like, who's that guy who's smarter than Crofton? We need to get him in here as a supervisor.
They're they're probably like after that last one, they're probably like, God, Crofton has a friend that needs to be institutionalized. I'll leave it up to you which one that is.
I thought your your retort was going to be like, actually, yeah, I told them they was in a PM1 pool. Like,
No.
I assume people Google search me before they looked for me and were like, "Oh, this guy's cool," and they want to bring me in.
Potentially.
Let's
I
see
Or
here. Oh
or
man, we don't really talk about stuff. Anyways, we'll talk about it off air. But our listener numbers have made quite a jump actually. That's
oh,
cool.
sweet.
Awesome.
It's like Library and Archives Canada's podcast.
It's yeah, substantial amount. Okay. All right, cool, man. Yeah,
Probably all people from my work.
it could be
probably.
if your whole
Oh, I
office.
hope I get that promotion.
There's
Crofton promised me an acting IS2.
If I listen to his podcast, then he'll definitely promote me because
He's one of the good ones.
and you'll have people who want to get their promotions, say things reference from the show. Be like, I listened to episode 203 on Robot Partners, and I thought your contributions were definitely
Was
the best contributions. About
The
now,
people who were opposed to you were definitely the worst.
yeah. Now,
What people? What are their names? Well, the other ones.
now that I've complimented you, how's that competition going? Is there any news? Um,
All right. Let us begin the show, gentlemen.
yeah, I like
Are
that
we
idea.
live on Twitch?
We are live. I tweeted it out.
Oh wait, I should bring it up so it bogs my computer down for 10 minutes.
That's a nice idea.
That sounds good. What I think's funny is Hodgins has had such a big problem putting his son to bed tonight, and I just assume at one point we're gonna start. It's just gonna get going, and then like he'll turn around and Ivan will be at the door being like "Dada" or whatever. And it's gonna be like,
Could happen.
How do you want us to handle it? Do you want us to mute, pause the show if that happens,
Oh,
or do you want us to
it's
keep
not
going?
likely to happen. Actually, the biggest thing I have happening right now is I'm for sure getting sick. I've had.
Can I tell you what I
rough-
pictured? Because when Croft was like, "Okay, let's call it. It's too late," and then you were immediately like, "You know, it's fine. I'll be ready in 5 minutes." I just pictured you like, I don't know, got like some Nyquil out or something. Just like, all right, let me put this little shit to sleep.
Your son, you're like, nice sleep, Ivan.
Yeah, so you've had your chance, son. Breathe peacefully.
Daddy's got a podcast.
Next
I
CBC
definitely felt like that.
Next CBC headline is man arrested for drugging his son so he could record an insignificant podcast.
But our listenership went up after that news story.
Yeah, that's true. We'll always remember Mike. Well, he can Skype in from jail. All right, I'm ready to go. Whose turn is it to host? Okay. All right. Well, good, bad, or bullshit. This is episode 204. Chat room. Hello. Thank you for being here. We don't really engage with the chat room during the show, but feel free to chat away anyways. We're reading it. Good, bad, or bullshit episode. What's the episode number? 204. It's 204. Starts in. Isn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah, it starts in 5, 4.
Hello and welcome to the Good, Bad, or Bullshit podcast. My name is Crofton Steers. I'm the original Star Wars trilogy of this show. With me, as always, my two co-hosts. I'm talking about the prequel trilogy of this show, Bo Schwartz.
Hello,
How are you, Bo?
Misa Bo Schwartz, Misa Onike, prequel best series ever, Misa prequel Onike.
So horrible. And of course, the new next generation series of Star Wars of this podcast. I'm talking Mike Hodgins. Mike,
Tea,
Force
Earl
Awakens.
Grey, hot. That's what Next Generation is, right?
Oh no, I'm just talking like
Star Wars. I thought you were gonna
Force
say like
Awakens.
spin-off one.
No, no,
Nope.
and it's funny. The more I was thinking about that, the more in my head I was like, no, this makes perfect sense because Bo is essentially a prequels apologist, and you're the one that always would tell me like, oh yeah, it's good they're making new ones, or like, and I was always the one being like, oh, they should leave all this alone or whatever. So
Yeah. Who knows who's right?
I know it's all depends on a certain point of view. What is it? What is it that Obi wants?
I got it.
All right.
Yeah.
So, gentlemen, it is actually a Saturday night. It's Canadian Thanksgiving weekend,
Or as I call it, the best Thanksgiving. Americans are crazy with their like, it's 2 weeks before Christmas. Let's have Thanksgiving. It seems so weird to me.
It does seem kind of strange in the sense that like, unless they were going to be like doing a one-shot like party all the way through to Christmas, Hanukkah styles, like thing between Thanksgiving. But if they're gonna do Thanksgiving and then take a break, work more, do stuff, and then come back for Christmas, it does seem kind of wrong-headed.
I would find like I really like Canadian Thanksgiving. I mean, when October is a beautiful month in the part of the country we live in. The leaves are turning golden colors. It's just nice. It's a nice time to hang out with your family and do all those things. And it's not like miserable November weather yet.
Yeah, November sucks. It is the worst month. Actually, I don't know. Maybe not the absolute worst, but in the top 2 or 3.
I think month?
Yeah,
no, it's the worst month.
You think
the worst month?
April?
April's the next contender, but at least there, what you're getting is this like explosion of green gonna happen soon. So you're kind of excited.
February for some people.
Nah, you can still ski and do fun things. You just gotta get off your ass.
I think it's like I'd like to look at the suicide rates. See which one. I think November's a big off yourself.
But I bet you suicide. It probably is February because people are like the winter haters are just like trying to, November they still like I can make it through.
Bo, if you were gonna off yourself, what month would you pick?
Probably September.
September.
Why would you pick that? Because you got to go back to school?
Well, no, but it's because like summer's supposed to be done. It's supposed to be more comfortable weather, and for some reason it gets hotter all the time, every year. And I forget, and I'm like, sweet, I'm looking forward to the cooler fall weather finally, and then.
But why would you off yourself right before you're just about to get the thing you want? You're like, oh, it's another week. Forget it.
I've only got 12 months. This particular September was very bad. But yeah.
It was some people loved it. I went swimming for like September 30th. I was swimming in the river and it was lovely.
Yeah. I mean, it's like
you got to take advantage.
You're asking me which one's the worst, which one I would off myself, and I suppose it's none of them really.
I definitely see how September marks the kind of like heading towards like, what's coming. It's going to get colder and darker and whatever. So you're like, well, I might as well off myself now. I get that. But on the other hand, it's like December's a pretty shitty month. If you think about it, it's pretty shitty. But what they do strategically is they have Christmas at the end, just like October has Halloween at the end. You stick these things at the end that people are looking forward to. They're like, well, I'm not going to off myself this month because I'm going to get candy on the 31st, right? Like you're going to wait till the next one, which happens to be November. And then you get into November. That's why the Americans have Thanksgiving then. Because like in Canada, you get to November 1st and you're like, oh, this sucks. And then you look how long you got to go till Christmas. It's cold and clammy.
And then in
November,
November,
I might as well just end it.
You're also like, oh, November, it's really miserable weather. At least there's a holiday. Oh, it's that holiday where we have to remember how millions of people died in war. We have our Remembrance Day, and you're like, a big downer, drizzles rain, true. And it's 2 degrees, and you're just
the most
crying.
Depressing holiday.
Okay, so are you guys contemplating suicide, or is this just a side effect of having toddlers?
No, it has nothing to do with toddlers. It has to do with all months discussions. When you go online and people are talking about shitty months or whatever, someone without fail brings up suicide statistics, and it's like, okay, look, if a bunch of people are killing themselves in 1 month, odds are not a great month. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
So speaking of things that are
not great,
that are not great. And that may want to off themselves. I'm talking about my friend, the random topic generator. The inanimate object that brings this show to life. Mike is generally the one to pull the switch. So can we like start the machine or something?
I think Mike's having a technical difficulty with machine tonight, actually.
Well, can you like remote start it? We didn't pay for that remote
yeah,
starter.
Right. Actually, I do have here a remote control switch for the random topic generator. Here it goes. Okay. Oh, there, I started it for him.
I knew it was worth investing in that thing.
Yeah, that's the first time we've had to use that, actually. It's a good thing we have a failsafe.
I can't believe it works on Wi-Fi.
Yeah. That's crazy. Mike seems to be muted, but somehow the noise from the engine made it through. Did we hook up its own auxiliary mic to it so that we could hear it each episode?
So do you get to now see when you remotely control it, the topic, or does Mike get to see the topic?
Well, Mike sees the topic because there's an LED like display. And Mike,
so you can't. So you can remotely activate it, but you can't even see it.
That's right.
It's kind of pointless.
It's kind of connected to the internet, this thing. The topic today is movie remakes.
Movie remakes.
Oh.
All right. Good one for a Saturday. And
well, also good one. We won't get into it, but just Bo and I both happen to have just seen Blade Runner 2049. We won't get into it because I know Crofton hasn't, but that's not a remake.
It's
so
not
what
a
am I saying?
remake.
That's a sequel.
But you know what?
Sequel.
I thought about maybe because it's in the top of mind and stuff like that. It's not a remake, but it's a return to something that about the amount of space of time that you would expect a remake to come. You know, like 35 years or whatever.
Yeah.
So I mean, in you know, it's while they have elements of the original and the ties to the original, I think that like, you know, it's its own thing. So for sure, there's always an interest, the creative bankruptcy that is Hollywood, in terms of reheating, rehashing, redoing.
But sorry to interrupt you because you're making a good point. I think on the whole, I think we have to be careful with the Blade Runner example because it actually contains Harrison Ford as the same character, but 30 years later, like older. You know, like so.
It's not. I never said it was a remake.
No. I know you didn't say it. I know we were discussing what just where that line is. Like because what you were saying is it definitely is looking at that thing we liked in the 80s and repackaging it for us nowadays, right? Like there's an element of that in there for sure. But I think that one would qualify as it's pretty much a sequel, but
it's a sequel. It's a long in gestation sequel.
It hits the same bones that remakes intend to do, which is, basically take a movie that we really liked and serve it to a new audience. Reheat it.
I mean, you say that, but what I would say, and using this as our jumping off point, but like I feel like the thing with his Blade Runner movies, it captured, I think, a lot of the essence of the first one in terms of style and feel. You feel like you're back in the same world, and I think that's what oftentimes sequels try to do, whereas remakes often want to put a new I think Robin said put a new stamp on something, but it might be a different style, a different take on something, and so it seems clear to me that it's not so much, you might want to do like something like Blade Runner and pay homage to the first one, but I feel like just a straight remake is just kind of just like, oh, we have no ideas, this thing was popular 20 years ago, let's do it because we need money. Like it really just seems very self-serving for Hollywood.
Because it's true, there's different types of remakes, right? There's a straight remake where it's like, okay, we're going to recast this original story, this original movie. We're going to relaunch the whole thing again for a new generation. And there is some merit there to a certain extent. I feel it's less and less as like I feel like the movies of our childhood are much more closer to what we see released nowadays than the movies of like when we were kids, the movies of our parents' generation that would be remade. Like often they'd be remade for the first time with color, with a bunch of other things. Like it was a bit of a different ballgame. But the other type of remake is taking the same story and reinterpreting it in a different way. And I think often about that, what was it, that Akira Kurosawa story that led to Fistful of Dollars, And
Lots
last
of westerns. The Magnificent Seven, I think, is based
yeah,
on Seven
was
Samurai,
this,
etc.
yeah, Seven Samurai, exactly. So like, but there's a lot of those things where it's like, oh, and people are so pissed now because a lot of these remakes are like, the twist is it's a gender swap, like it's Ocean's 11 except they're ladies, it like that's the, and some people have railed against that, but like essentially it's adding some new dimension to remakes, because my gut always is like, if you really like a movie and then it's remade, you're like, oh my, I rail against that all the time. Like when they had that, it's already forgotten, but when Colin Farrell, I think, or did that Total Recall remake a few years ago, and I have not seen it, for the record, but like the reviews were pretty bad, and I was like, why would you need to remake? And like I get in that mindset often, but the thing is, I know that I'm forgetting that a ton of movies that I must really like were remakes or reimaginings of something else.
Yeah.
It is funny, like the Western version from the Kurosawa samurai films, because there's being inspired by something and then wanting to do something new with it. I like that quote, that Picasso quote, good artists borrow, great artists steal. And I think that there could be something to that if you do something new with it. So to me, the Westerns taking inspiration from Kurosawa is a smart thing, and it's different enough that it doesn't feel like a straight remake. But for example, the Magnificent Seven, there's a 1960 version, which I'd seen at some point in my 20s and thought it was kind of cool. But they've remade the Magnificent Seven Western. So in 2016, so there's like they remade. So one was a departure from the original in terms of style and setting, and one is just like, oh, there was a 1960 Western. Let's make a new Western that's a remake of a Kurosawa film. And I'm just like, that, and that to me seems silly. Whereas if someone had, because I can get behind, as you called it, the gender swap. I don't know how PC that is,
Well, I was
or whatever.
point out
but
there's also race
genre.
Race swap in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and then there was Guess Who with Ashton Kutcher and Bernie Mac, where instead of bringing home a black man to the white family, it was a black girl bringing home a white man to a black family. You guys remember? I really wanted to point that out. Mike, you can continue, but I was like, it's not just gender; they do race swap remakes too.
Also, instead of being an intense drama, it's a goofball comedy.
Yeah,
goofball. It's pretty. But I mean, like, so I could get behind something like someone taking like, oh, I really like this story, and I feel like it would work in a comedy context, and really changing it. Or like, say, the Magnificent Seven, if someone had done a 2016 version and said, I think this really works is a futuristic in a sci-fi setting, I could see that working, because there may be new things to explore, but the story works. Like, I can kind of get behind those remakes where someone is remaking it differently enough that there's something new to get from it. But to me, to remake it in the same genre, the same story, just seems like a cheap money grab. And to be like, this is a good Western of the 60s, but no one's watched those anymore, let's make a new one with better effects or whatever.
But I got, like, here's the thing, I again do not think that's necessarily the worst if it turns out okay, because like one of my favorite recent Westerns, and just because we were talking about Westerns, is True Grit. Okay, and True Grit, Coen Brothers remake of John Wayne movie True Grit, also a Western, right? So
you picked a good one there.
Well, it's just because we were talking Westerns. Like Ocean's 11 is actually a remake of like the what do you call it, the Rat Pack movies with Frank Sinatra, arguably better. And I do think it's interesting because in both those cases, and I haven't seen the True Grit with John Wayne nor the Rat Pack movie with the Ocean's 11, but I've seen the new ones, and I think that might be a testament to what they did there, which is perhaps those films were not original classics. And when you remake a classic, I think that's where you enter into super dangerous ground, because it's like it's a classic for a reason, and then you're compared to that. But if you remake a movie that might have had a good premise, but maybe it wasn't executed to a T or whatever, which is my understanding of what the Frank Sinatra Ocean's 11 was, well, then it's like, hey, cool idea, let's do it. Now we can do it better, right? And I like that I like that concept, but people don't do that. They take movies that are like Ghostbusters or Total Recall, or movies that have like they got it right the first time in films that still stand up. You know, I get appealing to a new generation, but like don't do that. It seems dumb. It's a losing
I
proposition.
could see that point, like when you first said that people don't make movies that are like considered a classic, and I just had this idea of like someone's like, you know what movie I want to remake? Citizen Kane. Who should we cast? Like it's like, and I'm just like, no, just don't do that. Like it would be silly. Um, but but I don't know. Like even the Ghostbusters one, it's interesting because I still felt like that one was a little bit had enough of a twist on it that it was a bit of a, there was a bit of there was a new angle on it. Like again, if it had been four dudes and they remade it, that would be a really straight remake, and you'd be like, okay, why are you doing this? Putting the four women in, I feel like there's something there I can get behind. Whereas I feel like the superhero genre, like Spider-Man in particular, how many times have they done Spider-Man origin story? That's basically a remake of the same thing.
3. And
Yeah,
and here
that's stupid.
But see, here's the thing. Again, I would argue the merit of that, because I would say that as a huge, and we've had this discussion before, as a huge Spider-Man fan, I've never been happy. I felt that they have a good potential to do something really great and have never really delivered. And so to be like, okay, let's do it, the problem is they never get it right, or they never knock it out of the park, right?
Did you see Homecoming?
No, to be fair, I haven't seen
So
Homecoming.
Homecoming, not an origin story, but definitely a
Yeah.
reboot of it, and like 10 out of 10, like A+ quality. It's the
But
best
see,
Spider-Man movie by a mile.
and it probably is, but it took them multiple tries to get it. So I don't mind when a concept is good, or there's a fan base there or whatever, coming back and taking another kick at the can. I do have issues with remakes to essentially money grab concepts that aren't like super dated. Like, okay, here's another one recently that just Robocop. Okay, do you guys, and this is in the Total Recall vein, where it's like you hear them remaking it. It's a sci-fi movie from a certain time period. They have better special effects or whatever. It's like it came to theaters. I've never seen the rebooted Robocop. But I just think to myself, I'm like, why did they need to do that one? I mean, like, that one is one that they have that stands up pretty well, and honestly is a product of like the 80s excess, and like, the cocaine, the crime, and that ravaged Detroit, like all that sort of stuff. It seems like it's a product of its time. And so unless you're able to tweak the film and make it a reflection of this time, right? Then there's no point in doing it. Like, if you can critique current society, and again, I don't want to. I haven't seen the Blade Runner movie, but of some of the reviews I've read, they said they've done a good sort of job of sort of like, well, there were concerns in the 1980s that the original Blade Runner kind of echoed, that this one is able to sort of like touch on more recent concerns. And I think that that's a good reason to do something. If you think of a concept like another movie they did years ago was the Stepford Wives or whatever, which is like, I think has never been a good movie or that much of an interesting concept. But like, if you could use that to make a cutting social critique at a certain moment in time, then you're like, wow, that concept, if I brought it forward and used it now, like that, I can get behind. I can get behind that, but that's not what most of these are.
Well, yeah, it's the concept of remakes is weird. I think you're both onto something, because generally, I think my reaction to remake of anything, the more I liked the original, the less I'm happy to see a remake for it. Like you're saying, there has to be a reason to do it beyond. Let's just remake. Let's just put a new coat of paint on it. Like I think because film is an art form like everything else, you can't just like. What's a popular painting? Let's say what's the screaming guy that Van Gogh does? What's it called?
It's not Van Gogh. It's Van.
It's called The Scream.
He's Dutch though. It's not Van Gogh.
So it's like
no.
It's just paint. Like, can't we do a remake of that painting? And it's like I'm sure you could paint it over again, but it isn't that painting. And maybe someone did paint an interpretation that looks nothing like it that people like. I don't know art or the art world, but
a lot of homages.
So
to that.
It was a good idea to use that in my analogy, but it's just like the same is true of film. It's like you can't just put a new coat of paint on it. There has to be some more spirit behind it than that, and there are good examples of that, and I think the True Grit is a good example of it because I'm watching it, and I hadn't seen the original True Grit. But I really feel like when I watch the original True Grit, it'll be nothing like what I've watched the Coen brothers make here. You know, they've made their own movie. They've remade the narrative, but they've done something. They've done something new and unique and impacts me. You know, and I think that we also know that Hollywood is a business, and they just like to churn things out. I mean. Star Wars movies aren't remakes, but they are arguably tapping in to the remake vein in the fact that their artistic aesthetic is going back to the more original series rather than the much maligned new direction that George Lucas wanted to take the prequel films. But they're not remakes, so they don't count as remakes. But
critics would say The Force Awakens comes pretty close.
Well, the plot, I mean, there are... You know, when you really think about movies, there actually aren't that many different plots in the world. They're all fairly, they're about people, someone gets betrayed or someone falls in love. Like, there isn't, we've seen a lot of movies now. We're hitting our 30s. It takes a lot to surprise us. And you can
hide the Death Star plans in the blue droid or the Star Killer plans in the red droid. They're all different, really.
It's kind of lame when
Star Killer is pretty bad. Like on the whole, I like the movie. I try not to think about it too much. But when I hear the word Star Killer, I just like, fuck.
Yeah, it does make you
Can
kind
you
of
spend one more week in the writers' room, like? Coming up with something better than freaking
they're working on such a
Killer
heavy
remake?
layer of nostalgia that
Luke's name was Skywalker originally. Like, I mean, people grown then. It's just that we're used to that now. It's like whatever.
Sky, they've done a lot of good things. I mean, there's a character named Poe Dameron, pretty good Star Wars name. Like, on the whole, they've been pretty good. I can't believe they let Star Killer by, but that's just me.
But like again, if someone were to remake Star Wars Episode 4. It would annoy everyone, it'd just be like, why would you do that, And,
it will happen.
You think so?
Oh yeah, it'll happen. I give like, think about it. They're doing a Han Solo prequel right now. It's coming out soon.
So you're gonna get those characters.
They've cast a young Han Solo, so why? If they've already done that, like, why not just cast a couple of others and be like, hey, look, now we're doing it again. Oh man, I want to get it already. Oh,
I know. See how it's infuriating, and it's like you can understand people wanting to go back to the same well, right? Because it's like, and though the like expanding the universe and stuff like that, it can. I can get that it's like, oh, it's worked once. But again, what all this implies and what's kind of annoying to me about the idea of the remake is that it's not risk-taking, right? And it's like you look at something like Star Wars, like that was a risk someone took, a big risk. And people thought it was going to be nothing. And it gave something that everyone liked. And now we want more of it. And that's great. But if you spend your time, money, and effort, and still you've only produced a certain amount of movies, remaking things that you feel are going to be a lock, and it is the business aspect of Hollywood. They're like, I want a lock. I want my money back. They don't take a risk on some creative venture or some interesting new take, or, I don't want to like make films for some artiste. I need something saleable, but we're not going to get new stuff. I'm a bit divided because I think that there is something to be said for taking something and making it better. But I feel like if you're going to do that, it always has to be different enough there's a difference between taking inspiration from something and then building off it. And I think, anyone who likes art has to see that there's a place for that and everyone does it. And just remaking something. Yeah. And I just feel like the remake is just creatively bankrupt, right? There's just like, oh, we don't have any ideas. But hey, it's been 30 years since we made, especially this like Crofton was saying, the 80s ones, like the action movies. Those ones I'm just like, why are you doing them? They were pretty like Total Recall, which some people think the original's campy, but I like that movie. And I can't watch the new one. I refuse to. I even last night I had insomnia and I was up at night and I'm in a bit of a sci-fi kick right now. I was looking at the sci-fi movies on Netflix, and they had both the original and I almost started. And then at first I saw the remake. I was like, why is that there? And then I saw the original. I was like, oh. And I almost clicked to watch it, except I've seen it like 15 times or something, so I didn't want to watch it again. But I mean, why would I watch the remake? I'm just going to infuriate myself. I'm going to get angry. But I don't know. Maybe I'm.
One thing you said there that resonates with me is the lack of risk taking, and because even if I enjoy the remakes, there's been a lot of remakes that I liked. Some things, especially when they're reinvented or whatever, like something like a 12 Monkeys, which I actually had seen La Jetée, which it was based on in like a film class, and it's it's different enough, and I really like it. But it's still it's risky in that it's risky sci-fi. But the idea is proven. Somebody's come up with this idea. You didn't have to come up with it yourself. The overall concept, and especially if you know something has been a success. Getting back to the Spider-Man movies or Star Wars movies or whatever, they're a success. So it's like, wow, let's bang out another. When I hear remakes, there is one genre I think of more than any other. And that is horror films. And horror films, if you name a horror film franchise, I guarantee you that it is a remake or has been remade at one point. So It, which is the top grossing horror film of all time, or rated R film of all time now, I think, that just came out, the Stephen King movie. It was a remake of like at least a mini series that I had seen previously. And the Nightmare on Elm Street has recently been remade. Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Carrie, any horror movie you can think of, I can tell you in the last 10 years it has been remade, and I can also tell you that the remake sucked. And I haven't seen any of them, but like that they have not captured the public imagination like the originals are. And horror is weird because it's always sort of I guess sort of campy, sort of never like a
but there's
horror is also weird because it's like it has such there's a churning of horror that always, like, there is a subgenre of low budget horror which is thousands of films, like it's just churning. So I could see that one just banking on the whole remake thing, because I mean, if you really think about horror, the whole thing is a little bit, you kind of just want to see what you want to see. You're not looking to be challenged with something new. You want to see horror. Like, who cares if it's the same thing? You're looking for you're an enthusiast for gore and suspense and cheap thrills. So it's like, okay, you know what you're gonna get watching horror. I get that. Not I have a question for you guys, because I keep thinking about this as we're talking about this, and I know it's different, but particularly when you were talking about all those horror movies, a whole bunch of which are, say, based off Stephen King books. And I'm like, now I know we're talking movie remake, so it's a movie, and we make another version of it. But like, let's face it, half of all movies come from books, and I know that's not a remake, but and that goes so both ways for me, where it's like, so there's been some great movies, like Total Recall. Incidentally, I just read that Philip K. Dick short story that it's based off of, and I'll tell you, even the '80s movie, it's better than the story. The story is a little bit like goes off the rails a bit. It's not long, and I was like, oh, weird. I'm like, someone took that story and I think improved upon it. The brilliance of Philip K. Dick really was the spark of it, but someone actually, I think, made it better in terms of a story. But other things,
they're like, if we add "Get Your Ass to Mars" here,
Get Your Ass to Mars,
it's gonna make it so much better.
In looping repeat, it was really true. Anyways.
I mean, that was back in the day when GIFs were science fiction. I mean, and there was a literal GIF.
Oh, there never was, and now they domonate the internet.
It's total.
But the one thing I was gonna say also, because last night when I was again scrolling through movies to potentially watch, one was Ender's Game. and I love that book. I'm like, but I can't watch the movie because I really am just terrified it's gonna annoy me so much, and I don't think I'll ever be able to watch that movie. Do you think that qualifies as a remake? The
No.
book?
No,
No.
it's an adaptation over medium. Bo,
Yeah.
sorry, do you want to go ahead? I have
I was
thoughts
going
on
to
this,
answer his question and say no, and then I just think it's there are book rewrites, aren't there? Like stories get remade all the time. They get improved upon. Like because I think about like my theater studies and stuff like that, and it's like, well, certain like legends get rewritten all the time. The story of Odysseus, for example, or the story of certain Greek characters. New people would write new tales or retell the same tale. Like that's
actually, you know what?
fairly common.
This helps clear stuff up for me because you know what it is? It's an adaptation. And
Yeah.
that's what essentially some of the things like when that Kurosawa Fistful of Dollars example, that's an adaptation too.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
not a remake.
Yeah, fair.
A remake is when you take the exact same thing and you remake it, and you can tweak it, and you can remake it maybe in a different setting. It gets blurry, but for books, it's definitely novelizations.
Well,
and I actually, Mike, I also Ender's Game. I love the book. I have yet to see the movie, and the main reason for that is not because I'm scared that the movie's going to suck. It's because I already know the story, and it's the same reason I still haven't seen the last Harry Potter movie, but I have read all the books multiple times actually. I love the books and I love the movies, but I have no real burning curiosity to see all the movies. I never did. I would always just be like, okay, I'm gonna watch because I knew what happened. Like they were all straightforward adaptations. The book well done, but I knew the plot, so why would
And
why would I
even
care?
well done ones like Lord of the Rings, I was kind of a bit disappointed with them, even though they were quite true to stuff. I just had certain things in my mind that didn't work. But I would agree.
That's adaptation.
And I would agree that adaptation is valid and good, and we want to see that kind of stuff and the straight remake. But it does really. I agree with Crofton bringing it into focus to be like, even if you take a Kurosawa film that's about samurai and then you put it in a Western genre, I'm like, okay, that's like an adaptation. You've hopped genres, you've changed context and style enough. But you're inspired by, like, I'm for being inspired by art, and it gives you a new idea that you think gives it renewed energy. That's cool. I'm into that. And it could bring something new to it. But it's the whole like to me, to redo a Western Magnificent Seven as a Western Magnificent Seven is just like, why? Like, just
because I'm gonna get to the crux of the problem, because I have a little bit of insight here. It's gonna help. Because when we think about so film has sort of two disciplines in my mind in it, which is the art of moving photography and our institutions over time of theater, of dramatic art. Now, in theater, you have a text, and you can give it to 10 different theater companies and 10 different countries and have different direction. It'd still be the same text and story, but it could feel and be experienced very differently. And that's just how it is. That's what makes a live performance so unique, because that's even within theater companies, performances can vary from night to night. And so the way film is like, film is this. It's theater. There's a performance text, people saying lines of dialogue to each other, dramatic art. But it's a single entity, a single artifact shown pretty much identically to audiences the world over. And so we get to enshrine that artifact. We don't watch movies like, I wonder which of 52 cuts this is. I wonder what they don't edit it each night before it goes onto your VCR or with your VHS tape to watch it. So and
it doesn't replace the other one either, right? Like, to your point, like, you can still watch the other one if it's not it's not like it's not like it replaces it,
right? And imagine if Total Recall was in like actual live theaters, it'd be so different, and everyone would have so many different opinions, but maybe they all still like the base story. So to me, it seems kind of normal to just why aren't there 50 remakes of all the films we like? Well, I think they're a lot of work to put together. I think, judging by how expensive they are. But I think overall the impulse for people, think of all the people who would love to play Luke Skywalker. I mean, only Mark Hamill ever gets to be Luke Skywalker. Like no other actor or performer can bring their art to the role of Luke Skywalker and be like,
Yes.
that's kind of unfair. That's kind of unfair.
Look at him
it's not.
salivate right now.
Yeah,
But
I could be Luke Skywalker.
He's like, I'm Luke Skywalker.
Hey, can I go
but
down to Taji Station to get some power converters, Uncle Ben?
I love young Luke Skywalker.
I can see it.
That's a good read, right?
The reason why you don't want to see that is because there's lots of stuff that could be made and could be good, and I feel like let's expand the repertoire. It's like you can watch the Total Recall movie from the 80s and be like, all right, cool. And you can watch one made in the 2000s and be like, oh, okay, cool. But maybe you could have watched something different in the 2000s. It was another, like Philip K. Dick, which the story was based on, has written like 140 short stories. You telling me that, and a bunch of them have made into good movies like Minority Report, like Blade Runner, all these things. Are you telling me there's not one of those other 140 short stories that wouldn't make a cool sci-fi movie? There is. So I'm like, mind that, people, like get a good screenplay out of one of those. Be inspired by all these good writers in other places. Don't just remake something that's already there because you can get new actors and it has name recognition. And that's a small risk even, because if you're already drawing from literature, which annoys me again to some small extent, even though there's been a lot of good stuff come out of it, because I feel like film can operate on its own merits. You can creatively write a film script. It doesn't need to have a book. But the point being, even if you can't come up with your own ideas, at least mine some of the good stuff in literature that hasn't come to the screen that could do well in that medium, instead of remaking a movie that's already there. I mean, it's just what a waste of resources. Put these good actors and all this good production value to something interesting that we haven't seen and want to see. That's
Well, now getting back to Star Wars for a second, because in terms of the merit of why you would do these things, one thing that I think, because I like video games, as we know, but even I'm not super inspired by a lot of the video game remakes that come out, but I understand why they're there. They're there because technology advanced so fast in that space that what was a classic looks tremendously dated, 5-6 years later. So to keep it, fresh, you could potentially remake it or upgrade the previous game. Well, George Lucas essentially did that to Star Wars, right? With the special editions in '97, he was like, the vision that I wanted at the time, I wasn't able to fully realize due to limits of technology. And therefore, I am going to go back and edit this and add things with the technology I have. And everybody kind of railed against it, be like, you can't go back. What are you doing? You're editing this thing that wasn't there. This wasn't what it was like. This isn't how I remembered it. And people were getting upset. So would it have been a better alternative for him to have said, like, you know what? Now technology is where I need it to be to make the Star Wars movie that I had always imagined. So I am going to remake, or somebody else is going to remake the film. And they're black and white films, color. Maybe they were films that would be appreciated with color. Something along those lines. I can understand the impetus, the reason why you'd be like, okay, to get what the vision was for this. Like Fritz Lang's Metropolis is often considered a landmark film that sort of inspired everything from Blade Runner to dystopian futuristic sci-fi of today. It's obviously like a 1930s movie that doesn't necessarily hold up, especially in terms of special effects, audience standards. You're looking at it as a historical artifact in many ways. But what if somebody's like, I can flesh this out a little more. I can use the special effects of today to give greater life to that world. Is there not added value in that?
I mean, I think the problem is you're also going to get the biases of the time that's remade in. I mean, I think a lot of my problem with movies these days is special effects overkill in exchange for conflict and drama and letting actors communicate with each other. that kind of thing. So it's like people will use what's at their disposal, right? So it's like if you're making a movie in the 50s or 60s, you're going to use just good static set design, hopefully good acting and good story. But today you can prop it up on special effects, and a lot of movies are ruined because of it. So I mean, it's just like I always, let something speak. It was made in a certain era. It was what it was. Like, I don't know. I just think, is there something to be gained? I come back to the point again of like, make something new. Like there's enough new ideas, and the era which we live in, to me, is one where rapid change is happening. There's so many opportunities to discuss stuff that's going to happen. It's happening now. That like, let's do that. And again, unless something is super relevant from the past that really needs to be remade because we don't have anything else, I'd still say just send people back to the original work, and if people can't tolerate it, they're like, we have such short attention spans these days that you can't sit through a longer scene from a movie from the 1970s or something. Well, that's sad. and I think it's worth, I found it some difficult to watch some black and white movies from the 40s or whatever, but I've found value in watching them as well and learn new things. And I mean, people like you think of people who've done new things, like Quentin Tarantino has a whole style of his own movie, generally original movies, based off of like old stuff. So you can watch old stuff, be inspired by it, and bring something new to it. You can be a fan of some type of thing. Don't remake it. Let it inspire you, and then do something new. Like that's to me is art in motion. There's so much room for that. Let's do it. Don't just. I just feel like the remake, I'm getting really close to I'm happy to do a verdict anytime. But I'm like, the remake is just like...
While he's talking, he's like, I'm good now.
This is my
Let's do
verdict.
it now.
I don't... Well, and I still actually am not quite sure what I'm going to say, but anyways, maybe I won't go on. I'll save it. You guys have more new points to add?
Well, it's more a recycling of an old point I'd like to make, which is the fact that because you're coming down real hard there, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but then I think of a movie like True Grit that is for sure a remake, not an adaptation, and it's made something what everybody seems to think is much better than the original. And what they did there was they looked at something, I think a film that was imperfect but had good potential, and that there was enjoyable elements of it, and they're like, we could make this better. And I think that I totally think that there is merit in that, especially seeing is that some things are based on ideas, and the person that comes up with the idea, or the studio that originally comes up with an idea, and to be fair to True Grit, both were adaptations of a novel. So I mean, no studio came up with the idea. It was based off a book. But the concept being that like that if you can make something better, and you feel really passionate about that, I think that there is merit there. I hear in the promotion of a lot of these remakes, these film actors or producers or whatever saying all the right things, like I don't feel like it would be worth revisiting if there wasn't something we could add, and we really have brought things to the next level on this film. And then you watch it and you're like, no, you haven't. It's a piece of shit, and the first one was way better. Why did you remake this? But like, if all that was said there was true, and you're delivering a better film in the end, then I would say that would be something of high value. It's just that so seldomly happens. True Grit is the exception and not the rule.
Yeah. I think that's why we're scarred whenever we hear remake, right? Like, just as soon as we hear the word remake, it's bad. But let me tell you, we are limited to movies on this. But Battlestar Galactica, I'm sure glad that got remade as a TV series. The new one's quite good.
Yeah. Okay, let's not branch into that, but
it is a remake in the same genre, like audio. I get what he's saying.
We have better special effects. Let's make the show.
I think there was more to it than that in that remake, though. They took some more liberties and just.
Well,
but they did. It's exactly it's what I said. Like, I don't think anybody looked at the original Battlestar Galactica and was like, this is a perfect thing that will exist forever. They thought like, hey, cool ideas. There could be some stuff done here to make it better, and we can do it better, and let's do it. And then they were able to execute. I mean, like that's great. But again, I think more of an exception than the rule.
But it's also interesting and kind of telling because it's like, though people want to improve on stuff, it's not like they're taking, a universally panned piece of garbage movie from 10 years ago and being like, oh, okay, that was a big, huge flop. Let's try to make it better. People are just abandoning that stuff, right? The things people want to remake are things that people liked at some point. And again, that just goes to show you the reason it's being done is financial. It's like, or it's box office, it's name recognition. No one's going to take a movie that everybody hates. I can't even think of a good example. I was going to say Ishtar, but I haven't even seen that. So I don't, but it's one of these universally terrible movies from the past. But no one's taking like a movie everyone hates and despises and say, let's remake it, because they know people are going to bring that biases with them. They're remaking things that people have good associations with, and then trying to make it better, and that's for cash value.
What's the worst movie of all time? Is it Last Tango with Marlon Brando? Last Tango in Paris or something?
There's a lot of bad ones.
No remake of that one.
Well, that's the thing. They're not gonna. No one's gonna remake like really, really bad movies because like, what's the point?
Yeah.
And incidentally, True Grit. What's his name? The Wayne. John Wayne got the Academy Award for that movie. It's quite campy. I watched a bit of it, and it's like bubbly kind of. It's a bit of a comedy more than.
Well, it's funny because like there's so many movies. When you were talking there about I was like, for some reason this movie came to mind, The Heartbreak Kid with Ben Stiller, which is like, it was like some like lowbrow comedy from years ago, like and I remember for whatever reason it's like this. I think it's the second time that they remake that movie. Like it had existed, and at one point it was a hit, but it has no name recognition. Like nobody saw The Heartbreak Kid and was like, oh, I love the original or whatever. Like the idea was to steal the concept of the original and sell it to a new audience. And I get that there's a chance that like we're like, okay, we go in and we look and all of us have some interest in film at one point in our lives and have gone back and looked at old stuff, but a lot of people don't, or a lot of people don't have parents that are putting this stuff in front of them. So like the opportunity to present to them cool ideas again, and I would argue if I'm a movie studio, just remaster and re-release something instead of remaking it. Like I guess they figure they need the hottest new boys from Tiger Beat or whatever, but like, just the laziest thing to do is just re-release it.
Is Tiger Beat still out there?
I don't know.
Is that still a thing? Man, Tiger Beat, you guys. You know what movie I was thinking of though is remake? It wasn't Mr. Deeds a remake. For some reason I associate Adam Sandler with mostly bad movies.
Mr. Deeds was a remake, yeah.
And I'm like, did people really like the original? I guess so. I don't know, it's weird. That's a weird one.
But see, that's an example. There's a couple of these there's remakes of mediocre films, and the remakes are also mediocre or whatever. Like there's remakes that happen on so many levels, and I don't want to get back into the creative bankruptcy that I mentioned, that both Mike and I have been harping on a lot here. But I think I'm also ready for verdicts.
All right, well
let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's bring in the farm animals. Also, after we're done verdicts, I have a thing to say, so remind me, okay?
A thing, eh?
Yeah, about remakes. And where are you animals? Come here, animals. Here, come on in. There we go. This way. Yep, you over there.
It'd be funny if somebody remade Good, Bad, or Bull with.
No, you stole my thunder.
Three heartthrobs.
Quiet.
3 heartthrobs. Tiger Beat.
I was gonna say, don't we remake Good, Bad, or Bullshit every week? It's like the exact same show, but we try a different topic to see if it'll actually be a
that's
good
exactly
show.
why it's not the same.
It's a television series. It's like a podcast.
No,
It's
I
different
know.
episodes each time. If we remade it, we would recast all 3 of us. Well, 2 of the 3.
There you go. We definitely keep the same great jokes that Crofton brings to the show. Who wants to go first? Crofton, maybe you should go up first because you're.
Yeah, I'll go first. This is like one of those ones where I think Mike and I are having the same internal conversations right now, which is like, is this bullshit or is this bad? And and I've like been going back and forth because it's not good. It's not like it's better to create new stuff and not rehash old stuff. I think even rehashes that have value, and there are tons. And like we didn't even talk about foreign language films that are brought over here, like The Departed was Infernal Affairs, and like Oscar-winning movies that are often remakes, or 12 Angry Men is being remade or adapted in multiple ways. Like there's a lot of good that comes out of these in terms of individual stuff, but at the detriment of new stuff, that's not a good thing, right? So I don't think that it's a positive thing. So it leaves me, is it wholly negative, or do the fact that there's some of these good ones move me more to the bullshit? And I think the reason that I'm going to land and say that movie remakes are, and we can cue up the sound right about here, but movie remakes are bullshit, is because that just as to where we are now, where the hit to miss ratio is so askew in one way, where it's like there's so many more bad, useless, creatively bankrupt remakes than there are good, strong, value add remakes, doesn't change the concept of the potential that there could be a ton of good ones, and that there could be value added, and that there could be there's a bunch of imperfect films that could be remade and given a second life in a way that captures the hearts and minds of people more so than they were the first time around. And I think that that's cool. And I like, honestly, when that happens, like the fact that I'm enamored with the new True Grit, I never read the book, never saw the first movie. For me, that there's something positive there. However, that is not to say that it should replace coming up with new ideas or adapting newer ideas, or that most of the ones that are coming out now have any value added to them. Just the concept, though, is not necessarily one that I can say is wholly bad all the time. It's more complicated than that, and I think that sometimes there's value to it, so I have to say this bullshit.
All right, sounds good. Mike, I guess you want the last word on this one?
Oh no, I don't mind going now if you want to bring it home.
You go. I'll bring this one home.
I'll go because Crofton is right. I'm having the exact same internal debate that he has, and I'm still not even quite sure what I'm going to say between bad or bullshit, because they're definitely not good, and I think I'll go out on a limb a little bit because I agree with everything Crofton said, but I think I'm going to land right on bad. Say remakes are bad.
Oh no! Well, you confused me.
I did. And I'll just say why, to give that a little bit of context, because we spent some time, which I thought was useful, getting into the definition of what's a remake and what's an adaptation of something, or even something where people might say a spiritual sequel, like, which I would put, say, the new Ghostbusters into, things like that, where you're like, hey, it's different enough where I'm like, I don't consider this a straight remake. And the topic was movie remakes. And to me, if you just remake a movie and add better special effects, that's lame. If you adapt something into a new genre and bring something new to it because it's a story that will work and provide something new in a new context, I'm for that. But that's different. And I think I'll give credit to Crofton for pointing that out, but I think it was true and it resonated with me. And I just think anyone who's going to spend $20 million making the same movie that was already going to be made the same way, I tell that person, you are bad, my friend. Make a new damn movie. Go read some Philip K. Dick or someone else and get a new screenplay. Do something new. We'll all be better for it. And for the people making good spiritual remakes or genre crossing stuff, I'm like, yeah, adapting old ideas into new things. That I'm like good with. So, but the straight movie remake, bad. Don't need to see
bad
anymore.
All the way firmly in bad.
Never watch the new Total Recall.
Damn.
Get your ass to Mars will always be
All right. Well, I'm gonna go up get my ass to the verdict table, or wherever it is we give the verdicts. And I'm gonna say, listen, I'm like everyone else. When I hear something's getting remade, I get all tensed up. I have a harder time going to the bathroom, and I'm just like, oh, I'm all uncomfortable because the idea, you're always scared that they're gonna treat the source material badly if it's something you cared about, or something you cherished. And but that being said, there are things that are good that I had not watched that I've watched the remake of that were good, like True Grit as an example, and I'm grateful for those experiences. And I think to fight against the impulse to retell stories, because that's the oral tradition of telling stories is one where details do change depending upon the telling. I think you're just fighting against your very own impulses itself, and until we can all be in the hive mind and work on these things efficiently, it's an uphill battle. So why not fight it? Why fight it? I just said that just to sort of tick Mike off. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and say the impulse to remake movies is a bit of a waste of time to fight against. And while there are many examples of bad, I think you can point to a lot of good examples. And for that reason, I'm going to say movie remakes are good. You can't throw the baby out with the bathwater on this one.
I don't feel like that was legit. I felt like he pulled himself into good.
No, I felt good about it.
Bo generally operates from it's going to be good unless something is proving me otherwise.
Yeah,
mindset,
I think he's looking to bolster his good count because it's so high. And
I don't need to bolster it. I'm already
I think when I slid to bed and he had the whiff of a full spread verdict, he couldn't resist.
He was like, "Oh, full spread on something I'm not so passionate about. I'm gonna do it. I need to take it."
No, I know, because seriously, like a lot of people, and I don't know if it counts as a remake or not, but the Ghost in the Shell movie was quite good. It wasn't amazing, but it was good. And a lot of people poo-pooed it right from the jump because of whitewashing of characters. And I don't know if this counts as adaptation, but I'm like, it's
a live action adaptation. It's the same with the Beauty and the Beast movie from this year.
Okay.
They're when it's a cartoon movie that's made in live it's an adaptation.
Right. But anyways, so that's like one in particular is like, people are too harsh on that. I don't know. I'm trying to think of remakes.
Well, so like because of that, I have to say they're good.
Yeah, but Battlestar Galactica is a good example. I know it's not a movie, but if it can happen in TV, it can happen in movies. And people are saying good things about it, although again, that was a miniseries and not a movie. So
the most egregious remake of all time, in my opinion, is the remake of the movie Psycho, which again is one of these movies that if I were you, I would not remake because they pretty much got it right the first time. Yeah. So, but this is what they did. They said, you know what? They got it right the first time. So they literally filmed the same movie.
Yeah, that's stupid.
Shot to shot with different actors in color. And for some reason, even though it's the exact same film, like shot for shot, because of the actors, because of the everything, because you can almost feel the corporate soullessness. It's not nearly as good a movie. Like it's so weird, it's the same film. They filmed it shot for shot, anyway, just horrible.
Wasn't wasn't made by Hitchcock.
Horrible?
We could feel it.
What?
Your segue.
Oh right, yeah. Oh yeah. So if you want to tell me that I'm wrong, or Mike that he's wrong, or Bo that he's wrong, well, you might not have that much time. But send us an email, goodbadbull@gmail.com. That's one way you can reach us. We want to hear your topics too, so we can throw them in the random topic generator. Also, you can follow us on Twitter @goodbadbull. Find out when we're going live on twitch.tv/goodbadbull. We live stream these episodes, and we got a nice chat group out there who's participates along with us and stuff. So we would love to see you on there. Also, if you feel like supporting us, we love our Patreons at patreon.com/goodbadbull, and we would love it if you were one of them. So please consider that. And goodbadbull.com, the website, is where you can find all our previous episodes. Good Bad Bull is pretty much the key word. Use it with great responsibility, and you will find us. We are individuals of individual natures. You can follow us individually on the internet as well. Let us start with the prequels. I'm talking about Bo Schwartz. Bo, where can people find you?
You can find me on the internet at Bo Schwartz on Twitter, and there you can get links to all the other things I do, including when we go live with the show.
Misa, so happy. And Mike, the new generation of Star Wars, where can people follow you?
I'm still not sure I'm comfortable.
By the way, have you seen any of the new Star Wars? Anyways, tell the people where they can find you, but the Discovery's out.
Shut up, Bo. Yeah, you can follow my almost non-existent tweets. I should start remaking tweets. That's what I should do. When I see one I like, I should write it, but put change the punctuation a little bit.
Write it all in caps.
Yeah, or write it all in caps or something and retweet it at ML Hodgins. But yeah, you've got better things to do with your time than follow me on Twitter, I'll tell you.
You should do that to Donald. You should remake Donald Trump tweets. You can follow me at Crawford.
Yeah, we should start retweeting some Donald.
Yeah, I just
remake
them. I just write them in the way that I see them. All in big fluo green letters, fonts, Comic Sans, obviously.
I'm still following the Dungeons and Donald's account, and that they kind of remakes the tweets from a Dungeons and Dragons perspective, which I really appreciate.
That's an adaptation.
I call that an adaptation. That's there's merit there.
Man, you know what they say? Stupid minds think alike. Stupid. Yeah, but yeah, I was gonna say Discovery again, not a remake. It has nothing to do with our conversation today. But I've watched the first few episodes and it's quite good.
Which
the new
Star Trek
show?
Discovery. There's a new Star Trek show.
I'm never sure how I feel about it. It's
So
funny, even Star Trek.
The first few episodes are a little like the movies, but episode 3, good. It's a Star Trek show. It's definitely there.
Yeah.
So.
I'm such a TNG nerd. I don't know. I have trouble crossing over to the other ones.
The episode is called "Context is for Kings," and it's like this remarkable moment when she meets the new captain that he says this thing. It's all about context, and it's like that's what Michael says. It's like you can't just think about facts. Like context is important. And I was like, this is Star Trek.
It's true.
Yeah.
Channeling me.
It's for kings, Mike.
Whereas
context is for kings.
It is funny how that's a difference between Star Trek and Star Wars right there. Star Trek's like, the context is important, and Star Wars is like, evil or good, the light and the dark. It's just like simple candy, right?
Yeah. That's the context.
Yeah, they are.
Simple to follow. Yeah, no, it's.
I like when people have to run down Jeffrey's tubes to get away from danger.
Jeffrey's tube. Why are they called that?
I don't know, but there was a Jeffrey's tube in the last episode. I was like, yes.
And it's funny. I just spent all this time renovating my house, and I can't believe I didn't put a Jeffrey's tube in somewhere. Just thinking that would have come in handy.
And you have to put Heisenberg compensator.
You guys are too deep Star Trek nerd for me now.
What? There's nothing nerdy about Heisenberg.
That took place in Jeffrey's tube.
Or is it Heisenberg compressors or Heisenberg condensers? That's it.
Yeah. Well, the context of how I feel right now is kind of crappy because I'm getting rid of this cold, so I'm gonna leave and go to sleep. How's that?
That's good. We had sort of like a punchline earlier with the adaptations where I think Bo he can just like cut it there.
We'll end on Jeffrey's tubes. It's fine.
I thought the Jeffrey's tube. That was what kept me here. Was the Jeffrey's tube?
Nobody knows what that is.
Jeffrey's tube.
Oh, nerds know.
How many people in the chat room knows what a Jeffrey's tube is?
You guys are nerds.
And I appreciate Bo bringing it up. Actually, I must say.
Yeah. Well, you're my fellow Star Trek fan, so
yeah.
I'm here to report.
Okay, I'll see you guys later, and bye, chat room. Thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, you guys are amazing.
All right, thanks for doing it, Hodgins.
Yeah, thanks for coming in, and have a good night, and we'll see you soon.
As always.
Later. Take care. All right, and chat room, thank you so much for hanging out. There's a lot of you in there tonight. In fact, this is a record number for us. 12 viewers. Probably more over the course of the thing, but
holy shit. Yeah, no, he means 1,200. There's 1,200 of you in there.
Thank you. They can see how many viewers are in there.
Oh, they can? God damn it.
Yeah. Oh, no,
don't tell them it's a record. Say it's the lowest amount ever.
So, congratulations on attaining the lowest amount of viewers ever. Anyways, all right, we're gonna log
Was
off
there
now
any?
'cause
Are there any questions we should bang out before?
I don't know. They'll keep us here all night, but if you wanna chat with them a little bit, we can do that.
No, I mean like that were asked during the show. It wasn't a topic that would have like elicited a lot of questions necessarily. People all have remakes that they like or that they hate or that they whatever. So
I don't know how to fix this. What's going on?
I mean, I'm going through the list here. Blah 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 blah. Hey, somebody talked about video game remakes. I also said something about that. If they ever remade Jaws, I couldn't watch it. It says Wicked Kitten. I had a hard enough time watching the original Jaws. Star Killer. Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah. Oh, games created to be changed and remade. Movies are more of a solid state. Interesting. It's true. I agree with that. Horror.
Are you going through the entire chat?
Yeah, well, it's way longer than I thought. I guess that's what happens when you hit record numbers. Am I right, Bo?
There's way more of you now subscribed to the show. We had a big jump in numbers, so that's how these things do. And we've got a pretty busy chat room in there today.
Great, that's awesome.
And,
now I'll leave them.
All right, we do have to go. Crofton needs to get back to his video game playing.
What? I'm going to bed.
Oh,
it's almost midnight, Bo.
Okay. Yeah.
Your face says to me that you're nowhere near going to bed. But anyway,
I may be playing some more games. We'll see. We do have a busy day tomorrow, but yeah. When does that stop me? All right. Thank you, chat room.
Thanks,
have a good night, and I might see you later. Not 100% yet. If I'm gonna continue on with the stream. Good night.
You can pressure him, chat room. All right, later.